On May 31st, 1992, a group of Danish footballers were sitting on the beach. Their summer holidays had just started. Their national team hadn't even qualified for the European Championship. Some of them had already mentally checked out of football for the season. 10 days later, they were national champions of Europe. This is the story of how a team that didn't qualify for a tournament won it. And it only happened because of a war most of the players had nothing to do with. To understand this story, you have to start with a different team entirely. In 1991, Red Star Belgrade, a club from Yugoslavia, won the European Cup, the biggest prize in club football. Their squad was full of players considered among the most talented of their generation. Robert Prosinecki, Dejan Savicevic, Siniša Mihajlovic. Some pundits at the time believed this group could go on and win an international tournament too. And they nearly did. Yugoslavia topped their qualifying group for the 1992 European Championship, finishing above Denmark, Northern Ireland and Austria. On paper, they were one of the most exciting teams heading into the tournament in Sweden. Some commentators even tipped them as potential winners. Denmark, meanwhile, finished second in that same group. A solid team, but not a spectacular one. Their qualification campaign ended the way most second-place campaigns do, with a flight home and no tournament to look forward to. But while Yugoslavia's footballers were preparing for the biggest tournament of their careers, their country was falling apart. The federal state of Yugoslavia was disintegrating. Several republics had already declared independence, and by the spring of 1992, full-scale war had broken out in Bosnia and Herzegovina. On May 30th, 1992, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 757, placing strict international sanctions on what remained of Yugoslavia in response to the escalating war. Within 24 hours, football's governing bodies acted. FIFA and UEFA suspended the Yugoslav national team from all competitive football. The team that many had picked as dark horse favourites was sent home from Sweden. 10 days before the tournament kicked off, their dream was over. Not because of anything that happened on a football pitch, but because of decisions made thousands of miles away. Yugoslavia's place at the tournament didn't disappear, though. It needed to be filled, and, under the rules, that spot went to whoever had finished second in their qualifying group. That team was Denmark. By the time the Danish Football Association got the call, most of the squad had already scattered for the summer. Some players were on holiday with their families. Others had stopped training altogether, assuming their season was over. There was no training camp, no warm-up matches, no tactical preparation, just a phone call and 10 days. Manager Møller Nielsen had to scramble to get his players back. Most answered the call immediately, but not everyone answered the call. Michael Laudrup, arguably Denmark's most gifted player of his generation and brother of squad member Brian Laudrup, refused to join. He'd fallen out with the coach over Denmark's defensive, counter-attacking style of play, and he wasn't willing to set that disagreement aside, even for a European Championship. Denmark would have to go into the tournament without their best player. What they did have was a goalkeeper just starting to make a name for himself in England, a tight defensive structure, and almost nothing to lose. Nobody, including the players themselves, expected them to make it past the group stage. Denmark's group was brutal. England, the host nations Sweden, and France, all stronger on paper, all better prepared. The first match against England ended in a goalless draw. Not spectacular, but not a disaster either. A point on the board for a team assembled in barely a week. The second match against tournament hosts Sweden didn't go Denmark's way. A defeat that, for most teams in their position, would have all but ended the tournament. Going into the final group match against France, Denmark needed a win and a favourable result elsewhere just to stay alive. Most pundits had already written them off. But Denmark held on, scored twice, and beat France. Against every prediction, the team assembled in 10 days had survived the group stage. Next up, the reigning European champions, the Netherlands. If Denmark were underdogs against France, they were considered to have almost no chance against the Netherlands. The Dutch were the defending European champions, packed with some of the greatest players of that generation. And yet, Denmark took the lead. Twice. The Dutch equalised both times, and with the score locked at 2-2 deep into extra time, the match went to penalties. Marco van Basten, one of the best forwards in the world at the time, stepped up to take his penalty. Peter Schmeichel guessed right and saved it. Denmark won the shootout 5-4. The team that didn't qualify, assembled in 10 days, missing their best player, had just beaten the reigning European champions and reached the final. Waiting for them in the final, Germany. The reigning world champions and playing their first major tournament since reunification. On paper, it wasn't close. Germany had an extra day to prepare. Denmark was still, by any measure, a team thrown together at the last minute. For most of the match, Germany looked the better side, creating chance after chance. Schmeichel was called into action repeatedly, making save after save to keep Denmark in the game. Then, against the run of play, John Jensen, a defensive midfielder not known for scoring, struck a low shot from the edge of the box into the corner of the net. Denmark led 1-0. In the second half, Kim Vilfort doubled the lead, dragging the ball away from two defenders and finishing low into the corner. There's a quieter detail behind that goal worth knowing. Throughout the tournament, Vilfort had been flying home between matches to be with his young daughter, who was seriously ill. He scored one of the 2 goals that won Denmark the European Championship while carrying that weight off the pitch. Denmark held on. Final score, 2-0. A team that wasn't even supposed to be at the tournament had just become champions of Europe. Back home, it was chaos in the best possible way. Hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets of Copenhagen for the team's homecoming, one of the largest public gatherings the country had seen. For a nation of around 5 million people, this wasn't just a football trophy. It was a moment of pure, unscripted, national joy. And somewhere in the background of that celebration was the team that never got the chance to compete at all. Yugoslavia's golden generation never got another shot together. The country they represented didn't exist in the same form by the time football resumed. We'll never know if they would have won. What we do know is that the team that replaced them, with 10 days' notice and without their best player, did. Denmark's 1992 triumph is still considered one of the biggest shocks in the history of international football, not because of tactics or talent alone, but because of timing, circumstance, and a phone call that interrupted a beach holiday. If you want more stories like this, football's strangest twists, biggest scandals, and most unbelievable underdog runs, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.